everybody, to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And this is episode 68, Avengers Endgame. This is it. This is the culmination of all the Infinity Saga of MCU movies. 21 movies, I guess, led up to this. This is the 22nd movie.
That's insane.
I know, isn't it?
I didn't know that. And it
22 movies.
Blows my mind.
Yep. Started in 2008, of course, with Iron Man. And now we've come to Avengers Endgame. This is wrapping up the story for some of the characters, not all the characters. Obviously, there's going to be a few movies after this for certain characters, but for the most part, it is wrapping up the Infinity Saga. You know, a lot of these actors, their contracts are kind of over after Endgame, so it is wrapping up the story for a few people. Now, at the end of the last episode, I talked a little bit about how much money Infinity War made, which I have that right here. Infinity War, I'll just recap, made $678,815,482. That was its domestic total gross. Its worldwide gross was $2,048,359,754,000 I'm sorry, I said that totally wrong. $2,048,359,754. Is that how I said it? I don't even remember. Anyway, Endgame. Avengers Endgame. Right now, as of this recording, it is May 14th? 15th.
15th.
May 15th. The movie has been out for a couple weeks. It came out April 26th. So it is still pretty fresh in theaters, I would say. It's been the number one movie at the box office for the last 2 or 3 weekends. It has made, domestically, $734,190,353.
My God.
Worldwide.
What?
Yeah. Worldwide, it has made $2,508,890,353. Now, if you go to all-time box office records, right? Now, this is a little bit of a cheat, in my opinion, because
you got to adjust for.
You have to adjust for inflation.
And they include re-releases, don't they?
They do, I think, on this they do, which is also a little bit of a cheat. So if you do not account for inflation, Avengers Endgame is the number 3 movie of all time domestically. Number 1 is Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which made $936,662,000 domestically. Number 2 is Avatar with $760 million, and then Avengers Endgame with $734. Yeah. So I think Avengers Endgame is going to surpass Avatar before it finishes its theatrical run.
I'm going to go ahead and say there's a reason Avatar is up that high.
Why?
Wait, you want me to tell you?
Yeah, I would like you to tell me.
Okay. Because it was the first, true, 3D movie.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that because, I don't know. I think it was, the first true 3D movie that just most people saw. Because I remember seeing that same year, I went and saw, granted it was an animated film, but I went and saw Coraline, which was stop-motion animation.
Huh.
And that blew me away. That was the best 3D I'd ever seen. And then when I saw Avatar, I was like, this is good, but it ain't Coraline.
Right. But the cameras that he used were designed
for that and everything.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. And
everyone knew that.
Right.
People were told the 3D experience is one that you've never had before, and everyone went to go see the movie.
Yeah. Now, when Avatar 2 comes out in 2021, which is crazy, I wonder if it's going to do as well. And if it doesn't, I wonder what that means for Avatar 3, 4, and 5.
I am predicting it's not even going to come close.
I don't think it will either. So if you don't adjust for inflation, number 2, or worldwide, of all time, Avengers Endgame is number 2, just under Avatar. Now, if you adjust for inflation, they're probably not even nearly close to being at the top. Let me go back to all time real quick. Adjusted for inflation. Yeah, Endgame is number 24.
Right.
So, number 1 is Gone with the Wind. I don't think anything's going to surpass Gone with the Wind.
Right.
Then you got Star Wars right underneath it. But
those are including the re-releases, though, aren't they? Yeah.
And Gone with the Wind even I think includes re-release.
Yeah, it does.
So I don't really know if anything is going to surpass Gone with the Wind. But so anyway, so the point of that is this movie has made a ton of money. And part of that, I think, is because everybody wanted to know what happened after the snap. You know, we talked about in the last episode how originally they had planned on having the snap be the beginning of this movie. And if that were the case, this movie, I don't think, would have made nearly as much money as it has already.
Right.
Them putting it at the end and ending it on that kind of cliffhanger was the best decision they could have made.
Yep, absolutely.
So I saw this. I wanted to see it Thursday night, April 25th, I guess. But I couldn't. My wife was doing something at her job, and so we couldn't get to the theater that night.
And that was more important.
Well, I know. I should have just gone to see it. No, just kidding. So we went and saw it Friday night. And it was, in my opinion, the best theatrical going experience I've had since the original Avengers. The crowd was, it wasn't a talkative crowd. At least I didn't notice anybody talking. I was really engrossed in the film, though, so I give you that. But everybody, I mean, we were all laughing at the same parts. People were cheering and woo-hooing at certain parts. It was a lot of fun. And I had a smile on my face, I think, the entire time.
Nice.
Well, maybe not the entire time.
I saw it.
By the way,
yes.
If you haven't seen Endgame, don't listen to this. Or, go see it and then come back and listen to this.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about the whole movie. Spoilers will happen. The movie has made $735 million, though, so...
That means you've already seen it.
Chances are you've seen it.
I saw it at matinee. Like
middle of the day.
2 weeks. Yeah. It was before noon.
Okay.
Like 2 weeks after release.
Sure.
But it was still pretty packed.
Yeah.
But didn't
quite get the same experience.
Didn't have as far as the audience goes, yeah, I didn't have people were laughing and stuff, but not to the degree that they do at opening nights.
Right. People weren't cheering and
right.
Yeah.
I also got there a little bit late and walked in after. Like I don't know how much I missed. I'm pretty sure it was right at the beginning because it was like 15 minutes after the start time. And
previews are usually 15 to 20 minutes.
So like Tony Stark was laying on the ground, like doing his little journal talking.
Okay, yeah. So you missed one big scene, which was the movie actually before you even see the Marvel logo. The movie opens up with Hawkeye on his farm with his wife and children. And you see the ankle monitor on his leg.
That was something that I wanted to bring up in Infinity War was the fact that we never even saw Hawkeye.
Never saw Hawkeye, never saw Ant-Man.
That's right.
They were both under house arrest. That's what we were told in Infinity War. And then we see it in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and now we're seeing it. We saw it for Ant-Man, now we're seeing it for Hawkeye. So we see his ankle monitor on his leg. He's under house arrest still. And he's teaching his daughter how to use the bow and arrow. And his wife is like in the background. They've got like a picnic table on their property, and the two boys are playing catch, and looks like Hawkeye's wife is like making hot dogs or something. And he's teaching his daughter how to do the bow and arrow, and she gets like a bullseye, and he calls her Hawkeye. He's like, "All right, Hawkeye," gives her a high five. And he's like, "Now go get your arrow." And then his wife, I think, calls out to him. She says like, "Hot dogs are ready," or something, And he turns around to get his daughter, and she's not there. And you just see, it's not. It's as if like the snap has already happened like just a couple of seconds ago, because the ashes are kind of already starting to fade away.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he can't figure out where she
went.
And then when he turns around from that, his wife and kids are gone.
Oh, no.
And he is calling out for him and everything. And,
that's so terrible.
Yeah, and can't figure out where they went. And then it like cuts to black. And then this pretty good song starts playing, and that's when you see the Marvel logo. And then the only scene that you missed before Tony's talking to his helmet is he's playing paper football with Nebula.
Okay.
And it's actually a pretty good moment because Nebula, he starts off, he flicks like the football at her, and she kind of does like this fighting thing, and he's like, "No, that's not necessary." He's like, "You just got to hold the position." And it shows them kind of flicking paper footballs at each other back and forth. And then he's like, "All right." He's like, "We're tied now." He's like, "If you make the shot, you win." And she flicks it, and it goes, over the field goal essentially. And he's like, "Yep, and you won." And she and I think he's like, good job, and like wants to shake her hand, and she kind of is like taken aback by it. She's like, I won, and he's like being nice to her and stuff, and so it's this good moment for Nebula where she isn't being treated like crap essentially by this other person, and then after that Tony goes and starts talking to Pepper, leaving the message for Pepper on the helmet. So you didn't miss a whole lot, but you did miss that Hawkman. That's a DC character, Hawkeye scene. So that was probably the biggest thing you missed.
Okay.
But yeah, so you want to talk initial reactions, or you just want to kind of go through the movie and talk
Let's
about...
go through the movie.
Okay. So he has been on the ship with Nebula for I guess it's been 22 days since the snap. They did some CGI on him. He looks very skinny in that scene. Did you notice that?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Didn't know if it was CGI or not, though.
I'm pretty sure it was, because you go back and look at the trailer. They hadn't done it yet, and he looks kind of muscular in that same shot.
I want to jump ahead there real quick. Also talking about CGI on person, and let's talk about Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Wow. That was awesome. It was like
the young Michael Douglas?
Yeah. Because, I mean...
They've gotten pretty good with that.
That's what I'm saying.
That technology.
Like, I mean, of course they have the original actor to work with, but, you know, they did it in, was it Civil War with
Robert Downey Jr.? Yep.
Yeah. And
that looked really good.
Yeah, that was great. And, man, just...
They've even done it with Michael Douglas before. At the very beginning, have you seen the first Ant-Man? You've seen the first Ant-Man.
Yes.
Very first scene of the first Ant-Man is supposed to be like in the 1990s or something, and it shows Hank Pym coming to S.H.I.E.L.D., and I think that's when he quits or something.
I think I do remember.
Like 90s Michael Douglas.
Right. But this was 70s.
70s Michael Douglas, yeah. And it did look good. You're right. It did look good. His hair looked a little weird. Like, I think it was a wig or something, you know?
Right.
It looked very thick.
Right.
But no, they've come a long way with that technology. If you go back and watch, did you ever see Tron, the second Tron?
Yes. Yeah. And it's Kurt Russell, isn't it?
It's Jeff Bridges.
That's right.
No. Yeah, Jeff Bridges.
It is Jeff Bridges, yeah.
Yeah. That does not look that great. His kind of younger version in that movie didn't quite work. But if that movie had come out now, I think it would have looked really good. Like, they had, like, it was the beginning of that technology then, I think. And now, since it's, I mean, what year did that movie come out? 2011 or something like that?
Sounds pretty close, yeah.
So it's been, 8 years since that? So they've had a pretty good amount of time to kind of, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's perfected, but it's really, really good.
And like I said, you know, they did have the actor to work with.
Right.
Like, for instance, we haven't done a podcast on this, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Rogue One.
Right.
I was not
a fan.
Thrilled with it, yeah.
Gotcha. I actually didn't have a problem with Grand Moff Tarkin. I thought the Carrie Fisher look-alike, if you will, at the end. No, I guess not look-alike. The Carrie Fisher stand-in, who they made to look like Carrie Fisher, that one looked a little off to me. But I thought Grand Moff... You know, I saw a lot of complaints about Grand Moff Tarkin online, and I just didn't have that problem. I didn't think it looked bad, but I don't know. Maybe... I don't know. I would like to talk about that movie, so we do need to do an episode for that. We need to do an episode for that and Last Jedi.
Right.
So
we have a lot of work
and Solo.
to do.
There's three Star Wars movies we got to talk about. You haven't seen Solo? Oh man. Well, so back to Endgame. The film starts off. Tony Stark is in space. He's been there for 22 days. Does it seem like he would have lost that much weight in 3 weeks? He did have food. They just ran out of food. But I don't know how much they had to begin with.
Right. I would imagine Tony Stark, being an intelligent person, would ration his food. So he's probably not stuffing a whole lot down except what he would need to survive. So yeah, I would say,
depending on what they had to start with.
Right. I would say,
and it's
with
the
that
Guardians
knowledge,
ship.
Yeah.
So
I'd say he did lose that much.
Okay. It just seemed a little too skinny to me. But then again, I was like, well, if he had said in the video or in the recording, it's been 22 days, there's no food on this ship or something like that, you know, then I've been like, okay, he's gone 3 weeks without food.
Or he'd be dead.
Well, you can go 3 weeks without food. You just can't, not without water.
No, you can't go 3 weeks.
You can go 3 weeks without food.
No. You can live like 3 days without water and like 5 to 6 days without food.
I'm pretty sure you can live longer than that.
Okay.
What about people who are anorexic? It doesn't matter.
Well, you got me like wondering, but I'm pretty sure it's like.
All right, I'm going to Google how long can you live without food?
Yeah. It's not 3 weeks, I can tell you that.
3 weeks. The human body needs food and water to survive. A human can go for more than 3 weeks without food.
Okay.
Mahatma Gandhi survived 21 days of complete starvation, but water's a different story. So I don't know how long. I think you can't go very long without water, but apparently you can go about 3 weeks without food.
I apologize.
It's okay. Anyway, so he's on the verge of death. They're about to run out of oxygen. It's not even starvation that's killing him. They're about to run out of oxygen. I guess Nebula doesn't need oxygen. She's mostly machine, right? So there's one point in the movie where he offers her some food. He's eating something out of a bag, and she looks at it and then just pushes it towards him. So I don't even think she really needs. She might need food, but she doesn't probably need as much as Tony does.
So she's not complete android?
I don't think she's complete android. She's just mostly android. But she might. I could be wrong about that. She might be complete. She is the daughter of Thanos, so she didn't start off as an android. She has been kind of
beaten.
Yeah, she's been slowly turned into an android throughout her entire life. So I don't think she's 100% android. Okay. I think she's just she might be 99%.
I kind of always thought that she was the daughter of Thanos, like Gamora was the daughter of Thanos.
No, I think she's actually the daughter of Thanos. Gotcha. Okay. I again could be wrong about that, but I think Gamora was kind of the stepdaughter and Nebula was the actual daughter, which makes Nebula hating Gamora that much stronger because she's not even
right.
Gamora's not even his actual daughter, and Thanos considers Gamora his favorite. So anyway, he's about to die. They're running out of oxygen, and then Captain Marvel shows up. Now, there was a scene, you didn't see this because you didn't see Captain Marvel.
Right.
But you did see the end of Infinity War. We forgot to talk about this in our Infinity War episode. There's the post-credit scene. Do you recall the post-credit?
You're going to have to remind me.
Yeah. So there's only one post-credit scene in Infinity War, and it's Nick Fury and Maria Hill driving down the road in their car. And they say something about bogeys over Wakanda. So if you think about the timeline, it doesn't make sense because those ships coming down over Wakanda happened way before the snap. So either they're getting their information way late or something. But again, I can let that slide. She says there's bogeys over Wakanda, and then there's a car crash. And they both get out and they're like, what's going on? And then they look up and there's a helicopter that has lost control and slams into the building and explodes. And when Maria Hill goes to the car that crashed, she's like, there's nobody in here. And then they say a couple things or something, and then Maria Hill starts to dissolve. And Nick Fury's like, oh, man. And so he starts kind of rushing back to the car. And as he's going back to the car, there's a couple of bystanders that disappear. And then he grabs what looks like a pager. And as he's looking at the pager, he starts to dissolve. And he drops the pager. The pager hits the ground. The camera zooms in on it. And it says sending, sending, sending. And then boop, Captain Marvel's logo pops up. Okay. And then it cuts to black.
Okay.
So at the end of... I'm not going to spoil Captain Marvel for you. But I will spoil the post-credit sequence.
Okay. That's fine.
So at the post-credit sequence of Captain Marvel is you see that pager. So Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s, by the way. And Nick Fury is in it, so she knows who Nick Fury is and all that. So at the post-credit sequence, you see the pager, and Captain America's there, Black Widow's there, I think Rhodey is there, and they're all talking, they're basically kind of looking at the aftermath of the snap. They're seeing how many people have disappeared, and they're like, this is a nightmare. And suddenly the signal stops. And Rhodey's like, hey, that thing's not working anymore. So they go in there, and they're looking at it. And somebody says something like, get it back up and running again. I want to know as soon as we've got in touch with whoever it was trying to get in touch with. And they turn around, and as they turn around, Captain Marvel's standing there, and she goes, where's Fury? And then it cuts to black. So we all assumed, I say we all, me, assumed that scene was going to be in Endgame. Like, I just assumed that was a scene they took from Endgame and used it as a post-credit scene. That scene's not in the movie anywhere. So that was something I feel like...
Have they ever, though, used a post-credit sequence in a movie?
Yeah, the post-credit scene for Ant-Man was from Civil War.
What was the post-credit sequence in Ant-Man?
It was Winter Soldier had been kind of captured by Captain America and Falcon. And I forget what they say, but they're talking about something, and Falcon basically says, "I know a guy," referring to Ant-Man. It's like it's the scene that takes place like right before the airport scene in Civil War.
Okay.
So they used that scene as like the post-credit sequence in Ant-Man. But I think that might have been one of the only times. I'm trying to think if there was ever anything else. I don't think they ever used... I think that was one of the only times they used a scene from the movie as a post-credit sequence. So anyway, but I just assumed that this one... It just felt like a scene from Endgame, but it was misdirection, I guess, of some sort, because that's not how it happens at all in Endgame. She shows up, she saves Tony, which is another thing I assumed. I assumed she was going to save Tony, because from the teaser, he's talking about how he's running out of air and stuff, and we're like, well, Captain Marvel probably is going to save him. But then that post-credit scene came out, and she's already down there. I was like, well, who saves Tony?
Right.
Well, she does. So she does, and that scene's just not in the movie. But it was, that makes sense that she would save Tony. So she brings him back. He's very upset, understandably. But he's really upset with Captain America. Because they still have bad blood, essentially, from Civil War.
Right.
Because they did not see each other at all in Infinity War, which is interesting. Because, we as an audience, we see Captain America, we see Iron Man. We just assume
You're right.
We just
they never do.
We assume everybody's kind of happy, but they did not ever actually talk. Dr. Banner is the one that actually calls Captain America and says, we don't see it, it's off screen, but he's the one, he picks up Tony's phone after Tony goes off on the spaceship, and he calls Captain America and tells him about Thanos trying to get the Mind Stone from Vision. So this is the first time Iron Man and Captain America have really spoken to each other since the events of Civil War, and Iron Man is still pretty upset with him. And I feel like he's also kind of upset. I don't know. I was going to say he's kind of upset with himself, but I don't actually know if that's the case. But he talks about how he's like, didn't somebody say we needed an armor or suit of armor around the world?
Right.
Which is talking about what he had mentioned in Ultron. And, people were kind of against that idea, people on the team. And now he's like, we should have done that because this would have solved that problem. So I don't know if he's beating himself up or if he's really just pissed at Captain America and the rest of the team. But he's not in any sort of shape to fight at this point. He's weak. Well, Captain Marvel is pretty upset. I'm 50% of humanity, so people she knew obviously disappeared as well. And she decides she's going to go kill Thanos. Nebula knows where he is. They all go. Thor is also very upset because he had the chance to kill Thanos, but he didn't because he didn't go for the head.
Right.
So they fly to Thanos' planet, his garden. They find him there. And there had been a signature, an energy signature, same energy signature that had gone off when he snapped the first time. So they know he used the stones again.
And did we find out what he used them for?
Yes. He used the stones to destroy the stones.
That's right.
So their whole plan was they were going to go kill Thanos if they needed to.
And I didn't get that. I'm like, well, first of all, Thanos, you've got the stones. So, well, he mentioned, it's to get rid of temptation.
Yeah. Which
is smart, It's kind of like the Ring of Power.
Sure.
But what happens when the universe gets overpopulated again, Mr. Thanos?
I guess at that point he'll just have to go back to doing what he was doing before. So that was a scene we didn't talk about in Infinity War, but there's a flashback scene where he meets Gamora for the first time when she's a child.
Yeah, that was in Infinity War, right?
Yeah. That was in Infinity War. And it's something that I didn't notice, actually. I assumed everybody in that scene was getting murdered.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually, if you pay attention, it's only half the people.
Right.
So he was going to, I'm assuming, planet to planet and just murdering half the population,
right?
Because he didn't have the stones yet. So he was already kind of going about his task, which that means that did the planets that Thanos already killed half the people?
Did they lose another half?
Did they lose another half, or did they?
That's a good question.
It's
all in his mind.
Yeah, it's all
like
in his mind.
It's his will,
right?
So the question is,
I assume they also lost half of their people because I don't think he went. I assume he has to kind of think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Be like half of humanity except these planets. So
it's possible.
I don't know,
but I mean, with the stones gone, yeah, it's just going to get overpopulated again, according to his, opinion.
Sure.
And now he has nothing to do. Like you said,
I think at that point, I'm assuming half of humanity is gone. It would take a pretty long time to repopulate back to the number that we were
I don't think so.
How long? I think it would take a while.
But it speeds up as the numbers grow.
Sure, of course.
So,
do you think it would happen in Thanos' lifetime?
No.
That's what I'm thinking. So Thanos would be gone by that point. So he's like, whatever. I'll be dead and gone. Actually, Thanos will be gone pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because once they all learn that the stones are destroyed, Thor just chops his head off.
Gets lobbed right off. That, my jaw dropped.
Yeah, I think everybody's did.
Yeah. It was like, oh, I can't say it. Never mind. A different movie.
Okay. It was such a great scene, and then you see Thor kind of walking away, and he's out of focus, and then the movie cuts to black. And when it cut to black, I leaned over to my wife and I said, "Roll credits."
That's what me and my wife did too. Exactly.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who made that joke, but yeah, it just felt like I wish. I mean, the movie has a serious tone. I mean, it's a fun comic book superhero blockbuster movie, and it's not a goofy comedy. But if it had been a goofy comedy, I feel like there would have been credits right there.
Right. Yeah.
So the movie fades to black, and then it says 5 years later. And there were some gasps in the theater when that happened. When it said 5 years later, people were like, oh my gosh. And so these people, half of humanity has been gone for 5 years.
Right.
I don't know how the world would react or survive if half of people just were snapped out of existence.
Right.
But the shots of the city in the movie made it look like it was completely
just like anarchy almost.
Yeah, it just seemed like completely empty.
Like everyone gave up.
Yeah. It was like post-apocalyptic.
Right.
Which I guess kind of is. But it's like I feel like the world would take some time, but the world would move on, and this was just everything was in disarray. Everything was
thinking that when was it? It was Steve Rogers, right? That asked the kid on the bike.
That's Scott Lang, Ant-Man.
Oh yeah, right. It was. He, like, the kid turns around and looks at him and doesn't respond.
Are you crazy? Yeah, but he doesn't say anything. But that's basically what he's thinking.
But you could also just feel the despair on the kid, and I'm like, first of all, this probably happened when this kid was.
Yeah, he was 2.
He was like 2.
He was older than that. He's probably 7, maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
And I just felt like that was a little bit like I get you got to you're trying to use a younger kid to get more feels.
Yeah.
And it's a sad moment because we're just being introduced to this world, but like that kid would have been really going on about his day normally.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about most people. Like, it shows the baseball stadium completely just like abandoned. And granted, I know it's not half of Thanos wasn't I think it was supposed to be a random 50%, right?
Right.
So it's not like half of the baseball team would disappear. It's possible most of the baseball team disappeared and stuff like that. It's not like half of your coworkers would disappear. It's just random half of humanity. But I just feel like over the course of 5 years, people would have moved on and baseball teams would have started playing. And
it's kind of like 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
terrible time in our history. And, we definitely saw how it affected our country.
Absolutely. And it took a long time to get
did.
over.
But 5 years later,
Yeah.
we are back. I mean, we're way past 5 years now, obviously.
Right. But even 5 years after the fact, It was, for most of the country. I mean, I don't live in New York. I didn't live in New York at the time.
That's a good point.
So I don't know how it was 5 years later in New York. So I don't know. Maybe it does take a little. Maybe It took them a little longer than 5 years. So maybe it's fairly accurate. I don't know. But it just seemed like a little bit more.
And I'm definitely not trying to gloss over the fact that all these lives were lost and there was
of course not.
very a lot of sadness. But yeah, like people adapt, and that's how we get on,
right?
And move on. That's one of the special things about humanity.
And maybe this was just. I mean, it showed people starting to move on. So maybe it just took a long time because that was where we see the shots of the city, we see the baseball stadium, and then we cut to Steve Rogers and his help group, and we hear about this guy's date, and that guy is starting to kind of take the steps to recover, essentially, and Steve Rogers gives some words of advice, and it's good, but you can still tell that even Steve Rogers is still affected by it, and really just kind of hurting, essentially. So yeah. It's still, the wounds are pretty fresh even 5 years later.
Right.
We see Black Widow. She's kind of trying to lead essentially the Avengers. She talks to a couple people on kind of hologram. You got Rhodey. You got Okoye from Black Panther. You got who the other ones were. I don't remember. But it's not Falcon, because he's gone.
Right.
Rocket is one. Rocket is one. Maybe Nebula is the other one or something. I don't remember. But yes. Oh, Captain Marvel's one. And Captain Marvel actually talks about how she's got to do something or other. She's like, you might not see me for a long time.
Did it ever explain
what she had to go do? I forget. I feel like she does give a little bit of an explanation, but I don't remember exactly. But she's got her hair cut now, so she looks a little bit more like Captain Marvel of the comics, I guess. Although there's a pretty great meme on online where it shows, I forget what the first line is, but it shows her with her long hair, and then it shows her with her short hair, and it says, "Can I speak to your manager?" It's it's like that's the kind of haircut, which is pretty good. This movie's a pretty long movie, 3 hours long. It's the longest MCU movie we've had so far. Did it feel like 3 hours to you?
No, I'd say it felt about as long as a lot of the,
Infinity War and whatnot. Yeah.
How long was Infinity War?
2.5.
Yeah, it felt like that.
Yeah. It was pretty quick 3 hours for me, too. I feel like it felt a little bit longer the second time I saw it.
The first, the part of the movie that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
That was kind of slow for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the first quarter of the movie.
Yeah.
Kind of dragged.
Right.
While they're trying to figure out
what to do and whatnot. How do you feel about... So you didn't see Ant-Man and the Wasp, so you also don't know what's going on with Ant-Man in the beginning of this movie.
Nope.
Again, it's another post-credit sequence. So I'll spoil that for you if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
If you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, you don't want the post-credit sequence spoiled. It doesn't really spoil the movie for you, but feel free to fast forward a couple minutes. So at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, the post-credit sequence is they've got the van with the machine in it, kind of... They don't call it the time machine in that movie. It's like a quantum tunnel, something or other. And he is just going in there to get some healing particles for somebody. And so he jumps in there. He's talking to Michael Douglas and Hope on the headset. And they're like, okay, we're going to bring you back now in 5, 4. And then you hear some crackling. And he's like, guys? And it cuts to outside and they're all ashes. So they had been snapped away. So he's stuck in the quantum realm. And one of them even says before he goes in there, they're like, don't get sucked into a time vortex. We won't be able to save you. So they had kind of dropped that little Easter egg hint in there that time travel is kind of possible. So anyway, that's where he's been. And he's been in there for 5 years now. So since you hadn't seen that scene, I don't know how you felt about the rat walking over the controls and essentially turning it back on. Did you have any sort of feeling about that? If you recall.
I remember I mean, it made sense to me.
It doesn't bother me. I don't think that...
after 5 years, an animal comes and steps on a button? Sure.
Right. Just happens to be the right button that brings him back.
Why not?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. I think some people were talking about it and were like, really? Some people also said Doctor Strange looked at all the futures and it was the one where the rat stepped on the thing. That was the one. That was really what it was. That it wasn't him giving the time zone. It was the rat stepping on that right button. Which, how could he control that? I feel like that rat would have stepped on that button every time, no matter what.
Yeah.
Unless that rat got snapped out of existence in one of the futures. But Doctor Strange doesn't have any control over that either. So, but anyway, I didn't have a problem with it. Some people kind of complaining, they're like, really? A rat is what brings Scott back? But I'm like, that's fine. Fine with me. And then you hear, you find out that he's 5 years he's been in there, but it was only 5 hours for him.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of cool. Interesting little time warp situation there.
So the person that he goes to see, it's
his daughter.
Okay.
He goes to see Cassie. And in the Ant-Man movies, she's like 7 or 8 years old, probably, maybe. I don't know. She might be a little older than that. And now she's like a teenager. So I guess she had to be a little bit older because she looked like maybe she was 10. She looked like she'd be like 15, 16. So she maybe was 10 or 11 years old. I don't know. I'm really bad at estimating kids' ages. So, but she was young. And now she's 5 years older.
Okay.
And she assumed that he was dead. His name was on on that like memorial thing. So I was thinking like when she saw her dad, her first thought was people are coming back. Like that would have been my first thought. Like people are coming back. But I'm sure he explained.
Basically, everyone that has gone missing is considered gone by Thanos.
Yes.
What a convenient thing for serial killers.
That's a terrible thought.
They just get off scot-free.
They're like, oh, Thanos did it. Here's an interesting question about the 5 years thing. Mm-hmm. So spoiler alert, when people are brought back, they are brought back 5 years later, but they're essentially the same age. Like Peter Parker, he didn't age at all.
You're right.
He in fact says, I must have passed out. Like no time at all has passed for them. He was like, I must have passed out when I came out. When I came to, we were somewhere else, and Doctor Strange was there telling us what was going on. So, at the end of the film, jumping ahead a lot here, but at the very end of the film, Peter Parker goes back to high school, and he sees his friend.
Yeah, you're right.
And then, I could accept that. However, now that we've seen a Far From Home trailer, everybody in his class is the same age. So either they all got snapped out of existence or somebody messed up. Because let's say his friend hadn't been snapped out of existence. We just assume that he is because he's there. But if his friend hadn't been snapped out of existence, he would have graduated high school.
No, I know. You're right. I'm just trying to think. We're 100% sure that they came back 5 years later.
That was the whole point. Because when the Hulk snapped his fingers, Iron Man told him, "You're just bringing people back. You're not changing anything." And they were in present day, which technically is 2023, because it was 5 years after 2018.
Yeah.
So this movie takes place technically in 2023. So the Hulk snaps his fingers, and then Hawkman, I keep calling him Hawkman. Hawkeye's phone starts ringing, and it's his wife.
Right. That was a really cool moment, too.
So they came back in 2023. They disappeared in 2018. They came back in 2023.
So, did we, why did she call him right when they're brought back?
Right when it came. She must have been dialing, she was making hot dogs and was like, even though he was 5 feet away. I mean, he was more than that. He was 20 feet away or something.
She was dialing.
She was like, he's not coming. I said, hot dogs ready? He's not coming. I'm calling his phone. And then she disappeared. No, I don't know. Yeah, it was immediate though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it was still a good moment. It's one of those things where I can forgive it because I also saw something online that was like, oh, it's a good thing Hawkeye, paid his wife's cell phone bill and whatever for the last 5 years so that she could make the phone call.
That's true too. Wow.
But it's, again, those things I can forgive because him hearing his phone vibrate and like turning and looking at it, like Jeremy Renner does a good job in that scene, too.
And his answer.
Yeah.
Like when
his like voice cracks and
he's
stuff.
Like, hello.
Yeah.
Like trying to keep it cool, like to not it was great.
So what do you think about Professor Hulk? I think is what they kind of technically
I liked
call
him.
I did too.
Yeah.
I had read something. I tried to stay away from spoilers online, but I read things here and there. And I think I remember reading a rumor that this movie was going to have Smart Hulk, Professor Hulk, whatever you want to call him. And I was like, it's one of those things where I thought, I don't know if that's going to translate well to film. And it really worked.
Yeah.
I thought it worked really, really well.
It did.
And I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. I
liked the humor at the beginning with him. Like, how
taking the picture and stuff.
You know how I am with, like, it's a hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
And there were some misses, but there were some hits too.
Yeah.
Like the picture thing where he's like, "Oh, he doesn't want to take."
Right, yeah. He's like, "You want a picture with Ant-Man?" And they're like, "What?" He's like, "Never mind. No." He's like, "No." Yeah, that was pretty good.
I liked that.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Hulk out."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the humor honestly in the movie worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was anything where I really rolled my eyes or was like, "Oh, that doesn't work." But I think most of it was pretty spot on. It was pretty good. I don't want to go through the movie beat by beat just because I feel like it was a long movie and we'd take forever. So I kind of just want to go through some key scenes, I guess.
Sure.
And talk about characters and whatnot. Here's a question I have for you. So Hulk and Rocket travel to New Asgard to recruit Thor because they need his help. Because they have discovered that time travel is possible. And Tony at first is very resistant to it because he now has a daughter, and he doesn't want to risk that. I loved, by the way, him being like, all right, I'll take a look at this whole time travel thing. And he kind of like sets his computer to do the test. And it's like, I can't remember what it says, but it basically says like, it works. And he's like, what? Like I love that it was the first try, his first try. He was like, I figured it out. I figured out time travel. I love that. So anyway, they figured out that they can travel back through time to get the stones and snap everyone back into existence. But they need everybody's help. So Hulk and Rocket go to New Asgard to recruit Thor. Here's my first question. In Infinity War, when Thor runs into the Guardians,
mm-hmm.
and by runs into, I mean his body floats and hits the front of the spaceship, that Thor's ship has been destroyed. I mean, he's floating in space.
Right.
To me, it looks like there are 0 survivors.
Right.
How are there people in New Asgard? Korg is alive, Meek is alive, Valkyrie is alive, and several people who are still living in New Asgard.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, I can't answer it either. How are those people alive? Valkyrie, you could say, she might be able to survive in space because she's an Asgardian. But Korg and Meek and stuff, I don't know.
And how did they get to Earth?
How did they get to Earth? Yeah.
Yeah.
They got separated from Thor, so how did they get... Yeah, I don't know. Unless Thor somehow went back and got him floating in space
like, my friends,
years
hold on.
later. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm very curious about that. That was my question. And secondly, what do you think about quote-unquote Fat Thor?
I think he's fantastic.
I do too, actually. I think that I've seen some negative comments online about Thor and how people took it as kind of a fat joke or poking fun at overweight people. I don't really see that. I think that there are some laughs when you first see him, and it's because it's such a shock. He went from being, Chris Hemsworth is really in shape. Like, he's a buff dude. And he went from that to being this overweight, slob kind of. And so there's some laughs there, but I actually think Thor's story in this movie is amazing.
I agree.
He clearly has like PTSD.
Mm.
He's really just guilt-ridden for not killing Thanos when he had the chance, and I think he's taken the weight of the disappearance of all these people, and he's put all that blame on himself.
Right.
And that has
literally.
yeah. And so that has resulted, in depression and weight gain and stuff.
Yeah.
And he feels very unworthy to be Thor.
Right.
And
I personally liked it a lot because my wife, has a little bit of a thing for Thor.
Yeah, right.
And
I think I have a little bit of a thing for Thor.
Yeah, me too. But we're sitting in the theater, and she's eating popcorn.
Yeah.
And they go in, and it cuts
and you see
to
him.
Thor.
Yeah.
And my wife is in the middle of eating popcorn, and I just hear the crunching stop.
What have they done?
I look over, and she's just stunned. And I'm like, yes!
That's funny.
Yeah.
But I really like it, and I really like how... I love how it's... I mean, I almost... Like, people... I've read a couple of things online where people think that it was one big fat joke, and overweight people are taking a little bit of offense by it or whatever. I don't think that's the case. I think, if anything, it's kind of almost a body positive message, if you want to think of it that way, because he's super depressed. He has let himself go, clearly, and yet he is still worthy to wield meow. I was going to actually try to say it, but nope, not doing it. He's worthy enough to still wield the hammer.
Sure.
And I think that when he finally does, when they start to battle Thanos, he has Stormbreaker, he has Meow Meow, and the lightning comes down, and he's suddenly in his Thor costume.
Right.
He doesn't go back to being the chiseled dude.
Nope.
He's still overweight,
Yep.
and I'm really glad that they did that.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think if they had made him go back to chiseled, then I don't think it would have been as a positive storyline with him. It would have been a fat joke. It wouldn't have meant something, I think. So the fact that they kept him that size and everything and made him still be pretty amazing during the fight scene and everything I thought was really, really good. That was a great choice by the Russo brothers to do that.
Yeah.
And so Thor again being one of my favorite characters in this movie. So I'm glad that you liked it too. I liked it.
Yeah, I did.
It was really good. And Chris Hemsworth does such a good job. He really had a lot to do with the character. He had there was a lot of comedy, which he's very good at, but there was also a lot of emotion. He was the scenes where he's talking to his mom, and he's just he's like, it's almost played for laughs, but there's parts where he starts to cry with her, and he's kind of trying to pretend that he's not crying. But you can just tell that he
knows that's the day his mom died.
Right. And he still has all this guilt on him and everything, and he just can't handle it. And his mom is just being so comforting to him. That's one of my favorite scenes. It's not action packed or anything. It's just a really sweet moment between mother and son, and his acting in it is just perfect, I think.
But he also takes that time period Thor's hammer.
He does. Yes, he does.
So explain that one to me.
Well, because he's taking it away from that timeline, essentially. Well, it's the same thing with the stones. Essentially, what they do is they take all the stones, and once they have snapped everybody into existence, they have to return all the stones to the exact moment that they took them. So that way, it's as if the stones never left. So I assume it's the same thing with the hammer. So Captain America...
Go ahead.
Captain America is the one tasked with returning all the stones at the end of the movie. And since he is now worthy of carrying Meow Meow...
Which was awesome.
That was so many people were cheering in the theater for that scene. That was such an incredible scene. Such an incredible scene.
My wife didn't like it.
What?
Yeah, she wants only Thor to be able to wield the hammer.
Wow.
Yeah.
She needs to get over that. Captain America is worthy.
I agree.
No, I love seeing it. He's spinning it and he hits Thanos, and I mean, it was amazing. I could watch that scene over and over again. It was so good. I saw somebody put "Immigrant Song" from Thor Ragnarok. You know, I mean, I know that song is not from that movie, but it was used heavily in that movie. And
what
somebody
are you talking about? Led Zeppelin
was
wrote that song
for Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, that is not an old song. Somebody put that music in right when he catches it, you know? So you see it kind of rise off the ground, and then it hits Thanos, and then it comes back to Captain America, and as soon as it hits his hand, it goes dun, 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 and it fit really well. It worked perfectly. Right. I was like, I almost wish they had done that. But that scene was amazing. It was really, really good. And so anyway, so the point is, he's returning the stones from the moments that they got him. And since he can now wield the hammer, he's taking that back as well. And I'm assuming he's putting it back exactly where, at the moment, he took it. I mean, I almost wish there was like a little mini short film. Mini short film is kind of a redundant way to say that. I wish there was a short film of Captain America returning the stones, because I would love to see him kind of like hiding in the shadows, like watching Thor get the hammer, and he's like, I'm still worthy. And then they leave, and he like runs up and like puts the hammer back, you know?
He just like carefully puts it, you hear the dink,
dink.
Like,
and like somebody sees him and they're like, who's this guy carrying the hammer? But then when he returns the Soul Stone, who is the Soul Stone keeper? Red Skull. So can you imagine what Captain America climbs the mountain in Vormir, and Black Widow goes to her death, which would be terrible for Steve Rogers to have to see. And then he like shows up and he's like, I've got the Soul Stone, and Red Skull turns around. Captain America. I just wish I could see what that confrontation would be like. You know?
Be a good parody.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of moments where I wish I could just see those moments of him returning the stone. But clearly he did everything correctly, I guess. And that was the whole point, was if they had taken the stones and not returned them, they would have been creating alternate realities.
Right.
And they couldn't do that. So they had to return the stones exactly where they left them. And so I assume they don't specifically say it, but they show Captain America pick up the hammer before he travels back in time. So I assume he's returning the hammer.
But doesn't it still create alternate realities? Because that hammer has Steve Rogers' handprints on it.
I guess so. I mean, maybe we wiped him down.
Okay.
Well, that begs the question. If we're talking about the end of the movie now, so we're really jumping ahead here. But that also somebody asked me, how did Iron Man snap Thanos out of existence and not create an alternate reality?
You can't. It's no matter what you do, there's something different.
Right. And it has to do with that whole thing. Hulk, it's one of those things. I love time travel movies, but if you think about them too hard...
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what was it that he said that everyone gets wrong?
He's basically saying you can't go back to the past and change something and have that alter your future. So like all the time travel movies that we consider, like Back to the Future...
Oh, because they're saying it creates an alternate reality. Right.
So your present... It's like when you go back to the past is now your future. Which is, if you're reality, the past is now your future, your reality's future.
Mm-hmm.
Your present is now your past. So Thanos, from the past, travels to the future. So that's his reality. So the Thanos that had the gauntlet and snapped, it's super confusing, but I feel like it kind of makes sense, but at the same time doesn't really.
No, I'm a believer that it does affect your future.
Yeah.
And that the second anything changes, your memory would immediately be altered as well.
Right. That's like the fun way to think about it. And I don't know anything about. I mean, time travel is obviously just speculation. There's
right.
But apparently there's with quantum physics and stuff. That's what they were saying in the movie anyway. That's not how time travel works. But I would love to see a little bit more of a diagram about that. I also I've written time travel stories. They're not any good. Where the person travels back in time.
Oh, I read that. No, I liked it.
Which one was that?
The the noir one. Did you do one?
The one about the Black Dahlia murder. Did I say?
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah. So
I liked that.
So in that story, it was like this guy goes back in time and essentially tries to change something. Not tries to change something, but tries to kind of keep something the same, and finds out that everything that it's already happened. So like he had already visited the past, he just didn't know it yet, and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what I always think about with time travel is that you go back in time.
It's a loop.
Yeah, it's a loop. You go back in time and try to change something, but technically you're not going to change anything because it's already happened.
Right.
That's always fun for me to think about sometimes. But so anyway, it's a little confusing, the whole alternate reality thing. There's also the question that because Captain America stayed in the 50s or went back in time to live with Peggy, that he created an alternate reality by doing that.
And my wife didn't like that part either because she said that he basically went and robbed this one guy that she ends up marrying from his wife.
Did she watch Agent Carter? Is that what? Mm-mm. Oh, interesting. I don't recall. She did, I guess.
She got married.
She did get married. And I think they talk about it in Agent Carter. I never watched that show either. It's on Hulu. I thought about checking it out. But she's supposed to be with Captain America.
Isn't that her? But that's her daughter in Civil War, right? Or is it her niece? Okay. Yeah. But I do remember them talking about how she got married.
Yeah, I do too. But like I said, she's supposed to be with Captain America, so I don't really feel bad for that.
I agree. Yeah, that other guy stole her from Steve.
Yeah. What a jerk. So the time travel, so this movie, I love superhero movies, and I love time travel movies. And so put them together, gold. And I loved seeing the moments with the original Avengers movie.
Right.
There were some really great moments in that where like they all get on the elevator and they won't let Hulk take it, and he's got to take the stairs. I love seeing them all standing around Loki. And Loki's like, I think I'll have that drink now, which is like the big kind of pose scene from the end of Avengers. I just like how we kind of got like a little glimpse into what happens after that. And also, I love, it's a throwaway line. I didn't catch it the first time I saw the movie. I heard it last night. When they are in the lobby and they run into Robert Redford from Winter Soldier, they're like, Robert Redford's like, where do you think you're going? And Thor goes, to lunch and then back to Asgard or something like that. And his lunch line is referring to the shawarma scene which is the post-credit scene at the end of Avengers, which just shows them all sitting around that table, eating, and they're like, everything's destroyed. I was like, that's great. They actually, they threw in the fact of like when they went to go get shawarma in this movie.
Nice.
So yeah, that made me laugh. But yeah, I loved seeing the scene with Captain America fighting Captain America.
That was probably, aside from, that was my second favorite moment in the movie, yes.
What was your first favorite moment?
Well, we haven't, but that's kind of, to me, the end of the conversation.
Oh, okay, all right, we'll get there. We'll get there then. So yeah, all the Avengers stuff I loved. I even liked seeing not the Chosen One. What is she called? The Ancient One from Doctor Strange, and I love how she has knowledge of who Doctor Strange is, even though she hasn't met him yet and everything. And she's like, "You're about 5 years too early." I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And then I really thought it was funny. I rewatched a few movies before seeing Endgame. Mm-hmm. It's been a year since Infinity War.
You mean the Marvel movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a year since Infinity War, so I rewatched Avengers, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Thor Ragnarok, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Infinity War. And I was like, that's probably all I need to really watch before this movie. And then they start talking about events from Thor the Dark World. And I was like, dang it, I should have watched Thor the Dark World.
I never finished.
I know, and we kind of skipped over it. I like to do things in order for this podcast, and we don't always do it. Like, I wanted to, we talked about Thor, and I always wanted the next one to be Thor the Dark World, and then Thor Ragnarok came out, and we talked about that instead. So we've never actually done an episode on it, and I have put off watching it, or I did for a long time, because I didn't want to watch it and then us do a podcast on it and I'd have to rewatch it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just waiting for us to do the episode on it before I watched it again. And so I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember some of it. I mean, obviously I didn't need to rewatch it before seeing this movie. I got what was going on. But I was thinking, I was like, man, they made me want to rewatch Thor: The Dark World, is arguably one of the weaker Marvel movies.
Right.
And they're like, nah, we're going to talk about it. I mean, they kind of had to because the ether was technically an Infinity Stone and everything, so. But like I said, that was one of my favorite scenes with Thor and his mom. And then, other than that, I guess we did see a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy. I loved seeing the shot of Quill. He's dancing to the music, and then you see it from Brody's point of view, and he's like...
You hear him singing?
Yeah, so he's an idiot. Yeah, that was amazing.
He's a terrible singer.
Yeah, fantastic.
I was disappointed in Stan Lee's last cameo.
I was too, and I'm still kind of Is it officially his last cameo?
I don't know.
I'm hoping that there's still one more.
Maybe there'll be one in Far From Home.
Because I agree. I was a little bummed that they used the what do you want to call it? The age.
Right.
De-aging.
But it was so like, oh, did they?
I think so, because it took place in 1970.
Yeah, you're right.
He was the one driving the car.
Right.
And he was like, make love, not war, or something like that.
Yeah. It was just very weird.
Yeah, it's not as good as the Infinity War one, that's for sure.
Right.
Captain Marvel had a good one too, but I won't ruin that one for you.
Okay.
I think that was the last movie that we kind of saw in time travel wise, because the other time travel stuff, they go back to 1970. Tony sees his dad, and they get to talk a little bit, which was a nice moment.
Yeah, I liked that too. There were some moments of it that to me felt like they were forcing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when he was walking him out to the it was just a car. I guess,
he was just walking him outside.
But it just, I'm like, why is he being so personal?
Right, yeah.
With this guy that he just met.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because, you just could feel.
Right, he felt familiar. That's what he said.
Right.
It's like, that guy seems familiar.
Yeah.
So maybe he just felt comfortable around him. I also like that Captain America got to see Peggy in that scene.
Right.
That was a cool moment.
Oh, and just, exactly, because he had to be fighting so hard
to talk to her.
Just because he hadn't seen her in so long, and he's like, "This is the last time I'm going to be able to see her. This is it."
Because I mean, the last time he got to see her was, I think we saw her in Winter Soldier. She was like bedridden old lady, and then her funeral was in Civil War, so he didn't actually see her in Civil War. So yeah, it's been a while since he had seen her, and he had, obviously, it had been a while since she had been.
And she had a picture of him.
Yeah, on her desk. Yeah, and it was him. It was skinny him too, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, so they go and that's when we see young Michael Douglas too and everything, which was really good. But there's a moment in the Avengers sequence, the 2012 Avengers sequence, where they lose the Tesseract. And Loki grabs it and then teleports out of there. That is also going to be an alternate reality, I assume. So they kind of screwed that one up a little bit. But also, there's this whole thing, and this I don't know how I feel about this, but Disney's coming out with their own streaming service called Disney Plus, I believe. And apparently they're going to have a Loki show. They're going to have a WandaVision show. And they're going to have a Falcon Winter Soldier show. So I assume that the Loki show is going to be this alternate reality where he grabbed the Tesseract and teleported. Like, that moment, from that moment, is what this show is going to be based on. Otherwise, it's going to be some sort of prequel or something.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good decision, personally. I think they're branching off too much.
I kind of agree with you, and the WandaVision one is really confusing to me because Vision is dead. He does not come back. They get the Mind Stone, they snap everybody back, but he's gone. He's dead. He didn't come back. So that must be from, how Wanda and Vision are kind of alone together in the beginning of Infinity War. I'm guessing it's going to take place in between Civil War and Infinity War, or between. Yeah, I guess it would be Civil War and Infinity War. I don't know. I have no problem. We talked about this in the last episode. I have no problem seeing all these Marvel movies that are connected and kind of feeling like you have to see all of them in order to kind of get what's going on fully. I don't like the idea of also having to watch a TV show, though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that I'm opposed to it, because I'm sure it's a good show, but I've never watched Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I remember when Age of Ultron came out, they had kind of tied in together. And part of made me wanted to watch the show, but I was like, I just don't have. There's so many TV shows to watch, and I just don't have the time to watch them all. I don't want to feel like I have to watch these 3 shows and also pay for Disney's streaming service,
right,
in order to understand what's going to happen in the next Marvel movie. I think the movies should just be connected to themselves, and these shows should be separate.
I think this was the end, in my opinion. This was the period. Like, the slate closing for the Marvel story.
Right.
Like, the one that we've all... So, in these 3 shows...
so far.
Yeah, I think these 3 shows would be...
separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so. The only thing I can think of is because, Falcon got the shield at the end of this movie, that maybe it's going to be kind of Falcon becoming Captain America.
Right.
Because I don't know...
When you mentioned that Bucky was in it.
Yeah, Bucky's going to...
Like, that was my thought, too.
Right. I feel like, we've been talking for probably close to an hour, and I feel like we've just kind of brushed the surface of this film, and yet, there's so
You're
much,
right. There's
still so much to talk about.
We haven't even talked about Thanos.
I know. So I guess, I don't want to make this a 2-hour episode, but let's talk about the fight scene towards the end of the film.
So there's my favorite.
That's your favorite scene?
Yeah.
That whole fight scene?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was them coming out of the portals.
Oh, yes. Dude, the first time I saw that movie, again, so much cheering in the audience.
It was insane.
You just barely heard Falcon say something into Captain America's earpiece. It was like, I think it was like, it cut in and out. It was like, Captain, are you there? But it was like, are you there? Like, what? And people just lost it. And then in the background, you see that portal start to open, and people just lost it even more. It was incredible.
But, so you couldn't hear the music then?
Not really, but I saw it again last night, and I could hear it, and the Avengers theme and
it's
everything.
It's the theme!
Yeah.
Oh, man. That was probably the most happiest moment for me out of all of the or just Marvel movie moments.
Absolutely.
That one gave me chills. I'm like, this is what we've all been waiting for.
It was amazing. And they even kind of take it. I mean, Captain America's amazed, and he's looking around, and he's happy to see everybody back. And then you see Thanos, and they do a good job of not making him, like, he doesn't overdo it at all, but he has this look on his face like, oh crap, kind of thing. He's like, this is a lot of people. So yeah, it was an incredible moment. And then I can't remember what we were talking about, what movie it was or TV show, but you mentioned something about battle fatigue, like the fight scene going on a little too long.
Yes.
Was it Endgame or was it something else?
It was Infinity War.
It was Infinity War.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way for this movie. That fight scene at the end, I thought was so perfectly done.
Yeah. Every
character got a moment to shine. If not, more than one moment to shine. And it didn't feel like it went on too long. It didn't overstay its welcome. How did you feel about that scene where all the female characters kind of come together and start fighting?
I thought it felt forced.
Yeah, I could see that. I actually really liked it. I thought it was, I don't know if it's pandering, but I just really, when she was like, I can't remember what Spider-Man says something to her like, I hope you can do this. Something like that.
Something about her though needing help.
Yeah, and she was like, she's got help, and then all these female characters started showing up. I just thought it was really, really cool. I liked seeing them all together like that, and I thought they did a great job. And that's when Captain Marvel comes back. Of course, is at this final battle scene. She flies. I actually completely forgot about her the very first time I saw this movie. the guns start shooting upwards or something,
right?
And Iron Man is like, what are they doing? And she's like, there's something entering the atmosphere. And I stupidly was like, who is it? I was like, who's this gonna be? And then it was Captain Marvel. I was like, oh,
you know, I actually was the same way.
Were you?
Because was thinking that it was going to be. Granted, this would have been a whole another series of movies, but I was like, is there like a bigger baddie? I was thinking, is it Galactus?
That would have been crazy if Galactus had shown up. So anyway, it was Captain Marvel, and she was really, really good. I love the moment where Thanos tries to headbutt her, and it doesn't do anything to her. I thought that was great. This whole fight scene was incredible. Iron Man, Spider-Man and Iron Man's reunion was heartwarming, essentially.
Right.
He gives him a hug, and I like how Spider-Man's like, this is nice. In the middle of all this.
Apparently Howard the Duck was also in the scene. I didn't see him, I heard.
I did notice, I didn't see him the first time, but I saw him last night when I saw it again. And I know exactly when to look for him. As soon as Wasp shows up the first time, if you kind of look to the right, he shows up. He's in the background, so he's there. Howard the Duck is a part of that battle scene.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. So I know there's going to be stuff once we wrap this up that I'm going to be driving home tonight and being like, I remember, there's so much I feel like I'm going to want to talk about. I almost feel like, I don't think so, but I almost feel like we could do a part 2.
I mean, I just thought of something. The fact I really liked how Nebula, her past self, and her present self were networked together.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So that really worked out well for the story too, because he was able
Thanos was able to
pinpoint or get in there and figure out what they were doing.
Right. I was wondering, I guess I missed it the first time I saw it. I was like, how did he travel through time? And then I realized Nebula never made it to the present. She got stuck, her and Rhodey were going to get the orb when they were seeing Quill and everything. And Rhodey went back, and Nebula was about to, and then her networked, whatever messed with her, and she got captured by the past Nebula and Thanos. And because she never traveled through time, she still had a Pym particle. And
That's right.
And past Nebula gave that Pym particle to Thanos.
Yes.
And I don't know how he figured out how to use it that quick, but he did. Past Nebula goes to the present. She does the controls on the machine. And she doesn't just bring Thanos through the time portal, she brings his entire ship through. And I also love that moment. It's horrifying, but it was so well done where Ant-Man is looking out the window and he sees the birds flying and he's like I think we did it. And then Thanos' ship shoots at the building and he just gets knocked back and suddenly the entire building is getting blown apart by Thanos' ship. Incredible moment. There's so many incredible moments in this movie.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that Hulk and Rhodey and Rocket were all about to drown, and Ant-Man was going to save them. And then I feel like it's 15 minutes later when finally Ant-Man comes through as Giant Man and, puts them down on the ground. I was like, I think they'd be dead by now. But they did it because I think they, waited until the portals came and people started coming through the portals for him to have that big moment. But they looked like they were about to drown, and it takes a very long time for Ant-Man to become Giant Man. But I will say this movie has the fight scene especially. I know I've said this before for other comic book movies, but this movie especially feels like a comic book movie come to life.
Yeah.
I mean, not a comic book movie, a comic book come to life.
It
felt like a giant issue where all the characters come together.
Right, like one of the special issues.
Yeah, like an annual or something,
right.
All the characters are coming together, they're all fighting the bad guy. I mean, it's so new that I'm hesitant to say this. But to me, and this is also going to tell you how I feel about the movie, my rating and whatnot, but I feel like it is definitely one of the best comic book movies of all time, if not the best. And I'm hesitant to say that because it's so new, and also because I love The Dark Knight so much. But The Dark Knight and this are so different.
They're different. We've mentioned this before. I personally, don't even consider the Nolan Batman movies
comic book movies. Yeah, because they're so grounded in realism.
Yeah,
and stuff that happens in this movie would never happen in a Nolan film.
Like I consider,
or in a Nolan
Batman v Superman. That's a comic book,
right?
But the Nolan Batman movies, like you said, it's because they're not the way that they're made,
right,
and the way that they're supposed to be taken. They're not really They're not comic booky,
right? No, they're not. They're not. They're meant to, I mean, those movies are meant to be viewed as if like this could potentially happen and there's obviously some liberties being made, but like it's
but not to the degree of what comic book movies do.
Right?
Yeah,
not to the degree of time travel and Infinity Stones and stuff like that. But like it's meant to kind of take place in the real world. There's no super beings in the Nolan universe. There's no other superheroes in the Nolan universe. It's just Batman, and I don't even know if you would consider him a superhero in the Nolan universe. It's just he's
right.
Just a kind of Batman is a regular dude, but
I personally I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
Batman is a superhero.
Right. Absolutely.
I will argue that.
Right, all day long.
But I see what you're saying. Yeah, in the Nolan movies, he's not a superhero.
Right.
Because it's not comic booky.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there are no such thing. Maybe there are such things as superheroes in the Nolan universe, like in comic books.
Right.
Like a kid reading a comic book in the Nolan universe. And Batman wouldn't fall into that category.
Right.
So he's a vigilante, really. That's what he is in the Nolan universe. So yeah, it's apples and oranges. And so is this better than The Dark Knight? I don't know. The Dark Knight is a really, really great movie. But this is also a really, really great movie. But The Dark Knight is also a really great movie that can stand alone. Whereas this, you almost kind of need...
Yeah, it had to be built up to.
Yeah, you need the 21 movies before it almost. So it's really difficult to say whether, where this falls in the rank of comic book movies. But for me, and I know, was there anything else you want to talk about before we kind of wrap things up? I'm sure, like I said, I'll think of some stuff later, but that's just kind of how it goes.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to rate it then. For me, I give this one 5 stars. This has surpassed my favorite Marvel movie, which was The Avengers. This is my favorite Marvel movie.
Okay. I was going to say, though, you know how you were talking about the magic that you had for the original Avengers, seeing them all?
Yeah.
I had that for Endgame.
Nice.
When they were all coming out of the portals.
Yes.
And you got to have it twice.
Yeah.
Because you got to have it for that moment, too.
Yeah.
But no, I really like this movie. I think, for me, though, Infinity War and Endgame are about equal.
Okay.
And I give this one... It's not why I'm giving it the score. It's just... But I give it 4.5 out of 5. Yeah. But I was just saying, enjoyment-wise, I think I liked them kind of...
About the same.
About the same, yeah.
This one, I really liked Infinity War, but this one just blew me away. And I just loved how it wrapped up. I loved Iron Man's story.
We didn't talk about...
we didn't talk about...
funeral.
Right, which I'm going to talk about right now.
That is... Go ahead.
Well, I loved... Iron Man 1, the movie that started everything off, ends with him saying, I am Iron Man. And this one, Thanos says, I am inevitable. He tries to snap, doesn't have the stones. And Iron Man goes, I am Iron Man. Mm-hmm. It was perfect. It was like, the whole, it just made me love, it made me want to take all 22 movies and just give them a hug.
That's an amazing visual.
Yeah.
I think that is where the Stan Lee cameo should have been. Was at the funeral.
Oh, that would have been good, actually. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
It would have been like, well, why is there an old man?
But it would have been perfect.
It would have been perfect
to have him just kind of standing in the background. There was one person in that scene where the first time I saw it, I said, "Who is that?" And there's a kid. He looks like he's probably in his early 20s, kind of standing towards the back, just all by himself. and I found out it's the kid. It's the same actor who was the kid in Iron Man 3. They brought him back for the funeral.
Gotcha.
So I don't think it would have been weird at all to have Stan Lee standing there for Tony Stark's funeral. I think it would have been perfect.
And you could have taken out that's what I think. And you could have taken out the other cameo that he had in there.
I agree.
And replaced it with that. And it's kind of like a cameo for him being there at the end of the movie, but also it's like a farewell to him.
Mm-hmm. You did miss. It was great. The opening. So the Marvel Studios logo, usually has like shots of Iron Man and Hulk and Thor and stuff, kind of in the letters and stuff. For the beginning of Captain Marvel, it's all images of Stan Lee's cameos. It's all Stan Lee in the Marvel Studios logo. It's really, really cool. It's actually pretty great. But no, I agree. I think that would have been a great place to put that, actually. And I really liked that scene. I liked how everybody was there. I loved the little scene with Happy and Morgan Stark, and where he's asking her, like, is she hungry? And she says, yeah. And he's like, what do you want to eat? Cheeseburgers. And you see Happy he gets a little choked up, and he's like, your dad really liked cheeseburgers. It's such a small little scene, but I loved it. I thought it was so wonderful. And then I Love You 3000. That was really heartwarming, and he's get the message at the end of the movie. I mean, yeah, I expected somebody, one of the three kind of main characters, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America. I expected one, if not multiple of them to die. And so there's a part of me that kind of expected Iron Man or Captain America to die. And I was actually really kind of happy they went the way they did, because it was just a perfect way to wrap it up, with Iron Man starting it and Iron Man ending it.
Right.
And something weird about me, I've never cried in a movie before. I'm a little bit heartless that way. But this one, I got a little choked up, I'll say. No tears came, but I mean, I got the feels. The feels.
Gotcha. That's good.
Yeah.
Means you're not
a completely heartless person.
Right. I've been waiting to see if there was any proof of that.
It's been 25, 30 years.
I really like how I loved the Captain America when they were like going to bring him back, and then they were like,
"Where is he?"
Right, like I knew. I think after it might have even been before they were trying to bring him back. When I was like, "Oh, he's going to stay," and then they didn't. And then I didn't expect him to. Well, I kind of did, because, obviously he knows when they were going to be trying.
Right.
So he's got to have his little cool moment where he's sitting over there as an old man. Yeah. But I loved that whole thing about how he was there as an old man.
Yeah, I did too, man. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And that's Chris Evans. They put him in old makeup, and then they used some CGI to make him...
He kind of reminded me of Clint Eastwood a little bit.
I thought the same thing. There's especially one moment, I can't remember what it is, but there's one line that he says, or one little kind of just motion he makes with his head or something. It's dead on Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
I thought the exact same thing, but I thought he does such a great job. And I found out that he must have told Bucky that he was going to do it, because right before he goes back in time, Falcon's like, all right, I'll see you when you get back. But Bucky, he says bye to Bucky, and Bucky says he's going to miss him. And then when he doesn't come back, Bucky turns around and he's got a little bit of a smile on his face. And then the smile goes away when he sees that there's an old man sitting over there, which he now knows, he realizes is Steve. But I thought, there was like a little moment I didn't catch the first time I saw it. I was like, oh wow, Bucky knows he's not coming back. So I thought that was cool.
I was really hoping Rocket was going to get Bucky's arm at some point.
That would have been good.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. It didn't happen.
It didn't.
And then I loved the end with Quill and Thor. Yeah.
You're in charge.
Did you see his eyes?
Yeah.
They like widen a little bit, just with a little bit of a craze. You're in charge.
You're in charge. So that's a good question. So I assumed, Robert Downey Jr.'s contract, I believe, is up. I don't think he's going to be coming back as Iron Man. Nobody stays dead in comic books, but I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
Chris Evans has said he's not coming back as Captain America, which hope they don't do, because his storyline was wrapped up perfectly.
Right.
But Thor, I just assumed Chris Hemsworth was also done. But they really make it seem like he's probably going to be in the next Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, they could definitely do a Guardians 3 with him.
Absolutely. And they are doing a Guardians 3, so I assume Thor's going to be there and be a part of it. It would be weird if he wasn't, because they hinted at him joining that crew. So I'm very curious to see how that kind of pans out.
And have they announced Black Panther 2?
I don't know if they've officially announced it or not, but I know they're going to make it.
Yeah, they've got to make that.
Yeah. Doctor Strange 2, I'm pretty sure they're going to make, so.
Yeah, and there's going to be a third Spider-Man.
Yeah, I heard something about, you mentioned earlier that, like, Marvel got the rights to Spider-Man, and I don't know if that's exactly how it worked, because I heard something that they made a deal with Sony, like a 5-picture deal or something like that, and after Far From Home it would be up. So I can't see Marvel letting go of Spider-Man. So I feel like they're going to do something and be able to keep more movies going. Because if it was 5 movies, it'd be Civil War, Homecoming, Infinity War, Endgame, Far From Home.
Right.
That'd be all 5. So I hope that's not the case. I just remember seeing something about that online. And, you have to take stuff you see online with a grain of salt, obviously. But, because I know, like, the Spider-Man Homecoming is a Marvel movie, but it was also distributed or co-financed or something by Sony. The DVD, the Blu-ray, is not a Disney Blu-ray like all the other Marvel movies. It's a Sony movie or Sony Blu-ray. So there's some sort of partnership deal kind of going on with that. So I don't know if it's a constant thing or if there is some sort of time limit on it or something.
Okay.
But like I said, Spider-Man is like Marvel's top character, just about. Arguably.
Yeah. No, well, you're right, arguably now, because of the MCU. That's a good question. Is Spider-Man still at the top?
Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely before the MCU came out, he was.
Yeah, he was the number one character, probably. I assume. And I think he's still a pretty big character, but is he? They're like the number one.
Yeah, I don't know, because for us, we didn't grow up with the MCU,
right?
And there are kids that have grown up with these being like the main superheroes in their mind, and we like you liked Captain America, but when we were growing up, he surely wasn't even close to.
No, I mean he didn't have like nearly the same exposure as Spider-Man did.
Not even close.
He didn't have his own animated series, He didn't have up until 2011. He didn't have. I mean, I guess there were movies of him, but they were terrible from like the early 90s and 70s. But yeah, he didn't have the same. We didn't have the same exposure to Captain America as we did a lot of other characters like X-Men and Spider-Man and stuff like that.
It was really X-Men and Spider-Man.
Yeah,
because they had their own animated shows. Iron Man
did, but I don't think I watched it.
No, it was like a quick thing.
It was one season, I think.
Yeah. It was really X-Men and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that's why, we talked about this a long time ago. The first comic book movies, true comic book movies that came out.
X-Men and Spider-Man.
Were X-Men and Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. For the ones that started it all, because, I mean, if you go back a little further, Batman, obviously, and Superman.
Right.
But yeah, the movie that kind of, the movies that, in my opinion, in our opinion, started kind of the superhero comic book movie phenomenon that it is today was X-Men in 2000 and Spider-Man in 2002.
Yep.
For sure.
And then they came out with X2.
Yeah.
And that just really drove it forward. Like Spider-Man, we had a discussion about this, but Spider-Man was like, X-Men was good. Now we're going to take our main guy and show you what we can do with him.
Yeah.
And then X2 came out, and it was like, oh, yeah?
Right. I see your Spider-Man movie, and I bet you an X2.
Right. And then Spider-Man 2 came out, and it was like, we're going full force on this thing.
Yeah. Spider-Man 2 is still one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And again, so there's that other story, like, Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2, Avengers Endgame. Which one's better? It's hard. I don't know if I'll ever be able to actually make that decision.
It's hard for me to say, like, I really need to sit down and watch them all, but I think right now I would say Spider-Man 2 is still my number one.
Still your number one?
Yeah.
And I don't blame you, because that's a fantastic movie. That's a movie that, like, that's one of those movies where I don't have cable or anything, but if I were switching channels and I saw Spider-Man 2 on, I would sit there and watch the whole thing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't blame you at all. I mean, it would be very hard for me to make like a top 5 comic book movies of all time, but that, Dark Knight, and probably Endgame now would be in there, some sort of order. So, well, I think that's I've said all I need to say, I think, for Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, we'd love to hear what you think about Endgame. I hope number one, that you've seen it and you didn't listen to this before you saw it, because we spoiled everything for you just about. But you can always reach out to us on Facebook, SM and SM Podcast, or Twitter. Our handle is @CinemaHeroes, and then www.cinemaheroes.com. You can always leave us a comment on that website. We'd love to hear from you. That about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening, and as always, thanks for subscribing.